I can guarantee you, I can confirm for you that he's checking to see, like, do I have all my fucking teeth? All right, y'all, we're back. Much like Matt Cardona, we're back, y'all. Or is it Zach Ryder? I don't know. But anyway, congratulations, Matt Cardona. Love seeing all this that we're seeing. And who knows what the fuck is coming next. But stay tuned. Anyway, today we are back with more content for you at bobbyfish.com. Today, we're going to get into War Games. It's been highly requested. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, shit, there's a bunch. Which one do we start with? Why don't we start at the beginning? It was TakeOver Houston. All the jokes were there. Houston, we have a problem. That got tossed around very freely. And what was War Games? So War Games was a throwback. This was a 2-ring double cage with a roof on it, done originally by WCW, I believe, when they, not even, I believe, I know for a fact, was when it was still the NWA. It was during the Crockett years. This is some of the stuff that drew me into loving the NWA at that time. And I know that Sean and Hunter were big fans of this as well. I can say for myself, as a kid, I wore the fuck out those VHS tapes. I watched them over and over and over. So I loved the War Games matches. I remember, NXT, we were going pretty strong at that time. And as this Undisputed Era thing starts to like play itself out, I'll be honest, there were definitely times that I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, pinch me. Like, I'm getting to do this with two of my best friends, and we are, like, we're players in this thing. And you got to remember, we were just in Ring of Honor prior to this. And it's not that like New Japan was not, big time, because it was. We did the Tokyo Dome and stuff like, but there's nothing like WWE and the way that they do these things and these takeovers. Man, they were fucking magic. There was something. They didn't overstay their welcome. The matches, I don't know if they were like 7 or 8, but there was just enough to keep you wanting more, and never like too much where you were like, okay, can this fucking be over? Like, I gotta go to bed, I gotta work tomorrow. So those takeovers were magic. And as we were building to whatever the like crescendo would be of the storyline of the Undisputed Era, and how we just kind of pissed off everybody. So everybody and their brother in NXT wants to kick our asses, and what we end up with is AOP. A big crux of this at the time was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Adam and Roddy. And there was no affiliation with AOP and Roddy, but eventually it would become just, your enemy is my enemy sort of thing. And so then that becomes one team. We had an ongoing issue with Sanity. Obviously, if you remember back to TakeOver Brooklyn, that's who Kyle and I jump to start this whole thing, is Sanity, and we interrupt Sanity and AOP in their tag match. So this is building to that crescendo, and for me as a fan of the War Games, and knowing that Triple H and Shawn, were fans of that too, to have this coming back was epic for us. And it meant the world to us that they were trusting us to do this. I do remember that the War Games concept at that time, it was always 2 teams. This, I believe, would have been the first time that a War Games was being done as a triple threat. And so some of the rules, like I watched it back recently. Some of the rules were a little bit different than I remembered. But we had a 5 or 10 minute first period start, and that ended up being with Eric Young, Adam Cole, and Roddy. And they wrestled for like the first 10 minutes. And then it wasn't individual entries after that. Whoever had the advantage, which it ended up being the Undisputed Era, was the first team in. Both members, so me and Kyle, both entered the match after that first period was over. And then from there, it went on to include the other two teams. So I remember when we were putting this together, we thought to ourselves, there has to be escalation. So each time a new team enters, there's got to be an escalation in the action. So the first one being the Undisputed Era coming in, now we have the advantage. So we just come in and we're just going to shit kick for, that first period. Or, well, what would be the second period, right? So we're the heels. We've got, it's really kind of ironic to think that, like, we're the heels where, AOP and Sanity were the baby face. We're the smallest guys in the match, but it does. It makes sense, and it harkens back to I want to say, like, Ric Flair as the champion in the NWA. He was always running with his boys, the Horsemen, and they were always helping him save his ass, and he was generally overmatched. And this, I think, the psychology is similar. AOP, total ass kickers. And so after that first period, when Kyle and I entered and we took the advantage, the second period, if I remember correctly, was AOP. And what more, like, needs to be said? Like, these guys are 300 pounds apiece. So there's 600 pounds of ass kicker entering this match second. And the Undisputed Era, being the, chicken shit assholes that we were and probably still are, last thing we want to do is step up to AOP. So there's your escalation, right? And that we wanted that to be obvious. So AOP comes in second, and I remember we did something where they come in, and the first thing that Kyle and I do is grab the door, and we try to hold that gate closed, right? Because last thing we want is for these two monsters to get into the ring. But we planned out, like, that there'll be a little interaction there, and then I think I took a bump off the top rope from there, and then they come in and they just kick the shit out of us and everybody else that gets in their way, who at that time would have just been EY. But then I remember all of us kind of putting our heads together and having a conversation about, like, okay, well, if these two ass kickers come in, like, how cool would it be if not only do they start manhandling everyone, but they end up throwing everybody out of their ring? Like, there's two rings, and they just throw all of us into the other ring. Like, they don't want us in their ring, and they have that sort of control. So we did that, and I thought it was really cool that, gives Roddy a chance to kind of recover from the beating that he was taking. But then it also, like, it separates everyone. And now here's AOP in the one ring and the rest of us all in the other ring, because they beeled a bunch of us over to that second ring, including EY. And then there's just the three of them left, and Roddy's there. And then these two animals, they're so out of control that they take their partner and they beel him over to the second ring. And obviously, Roddy knocks us all down like bowling pins, but they use him as like a projectile because they're fucking AOP, and that's what AOP would do. So, and, then AOP is standing tall, I kind of with Roddy, kind of not, because they just made him a projectile. But then they set us up. I remember they had Kyle in one corner, Tree of Woe, and I think it was EY in the other. And then they pick me up, and maybe it was Wolfie. I don't know, but they plant us in the corners with Death Valley drivers, and I remember. I don't know how it felt for Kyle having me launched into him, but I know for me getting launched into him, I landed right on my fucking head, like right on top of my head. Those are always a little bit scary. But we do a little like personal inventory every time you take a bump like that, or just any sort of big bump where you kind of you make sure like, yeah, I'm okay. But yeah, there was a moment in there where I was like, all right, I think that might be a concussion. But we were good, and then we move on and progress past that. Again, the escalation of the story I thought was key, and I really love that we were able to put that kind of thought into this. And I love that, I'm very grateful that Triple H and Shawn, they trusted us. And when I say us, all of us, everybody in this match, Sanity, AOP, Ring, and the Undisputed Era, like to pull this shit off. And I think we do. So the plan was to escalate the violence the whole time, and then here we go. Sanity's coming in, and they're gonna introduce weapons. So like you got Killian Dane, who's as big as AOP or close to it, right? But then Alexander Wolf, he's the first one in the ring, and he squares off with AOP. And like Wolfie's a big dude, but he's not as big as Zim and Sonny and Zim. So he comes in already carrying a weapon, and he's got that retractable nightstick. So with the weapon, like it kind of evens the playing field, so he can get the jump on AOP, and it makes sense. This, I think, for all of us, was our opportunity to everybody apply their own little bit of psychology to things, and then get their little bit of shine. And everybody took turns, and I think that's what made it work. So Wolfie comes in and has that moment, and he's doing it on his own with the nightstick, taking out AOP. Undisputed Era, we're already down. We just got our faces kicked in by AOP prior to that. But now here comes all the weapons, and Killian Dane is... And the crowd is into it at this point, and they're egging him on to get the plunder, a Dusty Rhodesism right there, get the plunder out from underneath the ring. And it's a garbage can, and it's chairs, and it's, again, there's escalation in that too, right? Like he comes out with the nightstick, and then there's a couple chairs, and then there's a garbage can. And the fans are going to, murmur. Eventually, you got to get the tables. And that's exactly what happens here. And now you get Killian Dane coming into the ring. And now here's, for lack of a better term, and this is inside baseball for sure, but I think that's what you want. I think you want, I'm giving you a performer's perspective because that's who I am. And so Killian Dane is now coming in after all the weapons are in there, and he's got this battlefield to work with. And now it's time for him to run a hot tag. It's the hot tag to Killian Dane. And he comes in and he shows out and he shows off the things that he can do. He sets up a spot where he hits I think it's AOP in the corner with the senton drop kick that he had, a spot that he had done. He comes off the top rope and just piles on to everybody, knocks down the whole pile at one point, and he's just. He's a 300-pound guy that has no business moving as well as he does. Similar to Sonny and Zim in that way, AOP. And it's like what makes it so special is that there's similarities, but nobody's the same. Everybody's adding their spice to this soup that we're making, but nobody's. There's not salt followed by salt. There's, salt followed by pepper, followed by onion powder, followed by chili powder, like everybody's bringing something different. And I think that's why you could be entertained for an hour inside this fucking chaos. And that's what we have here. And yeah, I mean, that's what I think makes it awesome. Being one of the performers that was in it, like I can, so much starts to come back to me when I watch this. And so we go into what would be considered kind of a waterfall, is how it was referenced. I remember when we were calling it, when we were putting stuff together, where everybody kind of comes in and gets their shine. Their shine, though, has to be coming off the tail end of whatever just happened prior to that. So like if you go back to it and you watch, there's a point where, again, it's all the escalation, and then I think Kyle ends up wrapping the chain around Wolfie's arm and then putting him in Armageddon. And so that could end the match, right? So now there's tension, right? Because that could end the match. He taps out, the match is over. And then here comes EY off the top rope with an elbow drop on Kyle. That breaks the armbar. Then EY goes for the cover on Kyle, and then I come off with a moonsault to break that up. From there, we build to something that ends up with, I believe it's AOP getting Kyle and me up for the Super Collider, but Killian happens to be standing between the rings in that like no man's land, and so they do the Super Collider. AOP, I don't know if you all remember the Super Collider, but it was a double powerbomb spot where they would run the backs of their opponents together and then powerbomb the fuck out of them. So they did that here, but they did it on Killian's head. And then they powerbomb us, and then it leads to another breakup of a pin or something. However, here's a little Easter egg for y'all, because I'm watching it and the camera angles are such that they're picking up different things, and they pick up a moment where, if y'all go back and watch this, see if you can find the moment. But it's Killian. Killian is down selling, and I guess you'd have to be a performer to spot this, but I'm telling you. So there's a lot of times where, something like this in that chaos where you're selling, and so is it selling, or is somebody, really, feeling something? And that's always, I think that's the thing that as fans, you don't really understand. Do we try to plan things? Yes. Do those things that we try to plan go according to plan? More times than not, no, they fucking don't. More times than not, it gets screwed up, and then it's just, there's the chaos. And there's a moment here where you can see Killian is selling, but he's not selling like, oh, this is part of the show. I can guarantee you, I can confirm for you that he's checking to see, like, do I have all my fucking teeth? And that's exactly the look that's on his face. And those are numerous in a match, period, but especially a match like this, where there's just so many moving parts, there's so many things, and you're trying to get things to go as close to as according to plan as possible. But yeah, man, it's the controlled chaos of what these are, and we do it for your fucking entertainment. I don't know what that says about y'all as an audience. You're a little fucking sick, and we're probably even sicker for doing this. So for your entertainment. So I don't know who's more fucked up, you or us. So and there, yeah, y'all. There's another great spot. I mean, the ones that get me excited are the where we got to really tell a story. It's not the spots. It's that when the spots are able to like be used as a tool to tell a better story, that's when this shit is at its coolest. And there's a point in here after we do the kind of the waterfall and everybody gets their little bit of shine, we end up building to in the corners of the two rings, we do like a Tower of Doom on either side. However, prior to that, Cole, who is like the ultimate antagonist in this, like even as a team, Kyle and I think, and part of what made the Undisputed Era work was that it was still Cole kind of as the ringleader. Like Cole was still the guy that somehow was just manipulating everyone, probably a little bit, including me and Kyle. Or there was at least that feel to it. And this is a perfect example of that, and it's played out in the action. So Cole is in the center of the two rings, and then this Tower of Doom gets built on one side, built on the other. Everybody comes in, and organically, both sides fall. And both sides crash and burn as you would have in a lot of these, type of matches. The crash and burn happens, and what we were trying to accomplish with that was as that crash and burn happens, Cole is still on top, and he's untouched, he's unblemished. Everybody else eats shit on that, and then here's this asshole comes out smelling like a rose. Like that. What is the cliche and could be covered in shit, but still comes out smelling like a rose. Like that's the epitome. That spot, I feel like, was the epitome of that. And I think that these are sort of the bricks that are laid to the foundation of what ultimately would be Adam Cole and what would be the Undisputed Era, and why, all of these pieces to this puzzle is why it was so effective, and why it was, just magical shit. I remember we were really trying to get back into the story here, especially at the end. And you'll see it after everybody crashes and burns, and Adam's on the top rope. He's the last man standing, so to speak. But then the first two guys, the first two entities that are on their feet next are the ass kickers. It's AOP. And they got their sights set on Cole. So they immediately start to go up after Cole. And now here goes Cole. Which way you going to go? You can only get higher, right? So he starts to climb, and then AOP ends up top. There's an interesting, not interesting. It's reality loves to step in our fake world of pro wrestling and fuck us up when it gets a chance. And this is one of those times. So Wolfie goes up after, I think it's Zim, grabs him in a German suplex and takes him off onto those tables that were set up with a German suplex, a huge avalanche style German suplex. And I remember specifically after the match, Wolfie ends up getting a bunch of stitches in the back of his head. I think it was like double digits, like at least 10. Like he pretty much broke the tables with his head, I believe. But that is adding to the story of Adam Cole and everybody else crashing and burning. And now we specifically wanted there to be a reason why Cole goes to the top of the cage. And this is what we set up as performers to explain the psychology of it. And that to me, that's storytelling. And you've got all of these pieces to the puzzle, and we're using every piece. Every person that's in the match does not get wasted. Everybody has their role to tell the bigger story that should, come to an end at the end of this, or continue on. So Cole ends up where everybody crashes and burns, and Cole is now shimmying his way across the top of the cage like a chicken shit, because he was trying to get away from AOP. Now they crash, one of them crashes and burns, and then it's the pursuit of Cole. And Cole makes his way across the top of the cage. So you've got that visual, that shot of Cole slinking his way over the top of that cage. There's nothing manly about the way that he went about his business there. Then he gets over to the corner on the top of that cage, and he stands up, and he stands up and can kind of survey the land, like all of the chaos and all of the crash and burn that's happened, and all the bodies laying prone in the ring, and the only one standing is Adam Cole. And Adam Cole stands up at the top of the cage, like the highest viewpoint that you could have. And then rather than do something that's going to lead to victory, he takes that opportunity to indulge his ego and does the Adam Cole baby at the top of the cage. And again, this is the storytelling. This is where we were all trying to tell that story. This wasn't just Adam, telling his own story. It was every piece of the puzzle, being utilized. And he stands up and he does his thing at the top of the cage. And the way WWE's camera people operate is like a well-oiled machine too, because you see that, and then they don't give away what's going on, in the ring. They shoot it in a way that like it unfolds before your eyes, and then you pick up the one person left standing other than Adam, and it's Roddy. And it's Roddy standing in the middle of the ring, and where is he looking? He's looking straight up at Cole as Cole hits his pose, strokes his ego, and he's got to look down, and reality sets in. Oh shit, Roddy's up. And so now Roddy starts making his way up the cage. And if anybody knows Roddy, like Roddy's a motor that never fucking ends. So if anybody's going to scale that cage quickly, it's Roddy. He's the Energizer Bunny, and he makes it to the top of the cage as Cole tries to climb down to the outside of the cage, and Roddy gets him. He stops him. He grabs him by that long, luxurious hair of his, and he pulls him back up top. And now this builds to a huge superplex spot. Probably the apex of the match. This is probably the high point. Everything after this is kind of just tying it up into a nice bow, in my opinion. So they come off the top of the cage with this superplex, and they land on all of us, and now everybody just spills out utter chaos, just utter carnage, not chaos, utter carnage, and everybody's just laying there. You as fans, we're giving you that opportunity to just kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Process all that you just saw, and this is an important aspect of what we do. And I think sometimes when I've been, coaching pro wrestling, like this is something that I think people don't get all the time is that like you've got to have patience. You've got to let people process all of what they just saw. If not, you're just fast forwarding past the ending, Like it just doesn't make sense to put all that work in and then not give the audience a chance to absorb what they saw. And that's exactly what happens here. You have that moment, but then the match isn't over. It's we're not done. It's got to finish up, and so I think we build to where Roddy and Cole end up being the only two on their feet in the center of the ring, and they start trading. Kind of a callback to the beginning of this match, because the first punch was thrown by Roddy on Cole or Cole on Roddy. I don't remember what it was. And then right after that was EY getting into the mix. And that's exactly what happens here at the end. So we start it one way and we're finishing it the same way. There's something so poetic about that. Like there's just something, this is a phrase that I'm going to use here. It's like, it's beautifully violent. And then that's how this starts to come together at the end. And then the finish of the match is not another huge spot, or a huge happening or a big bump or anything like that. It's relatively tame, considering what you just saw. I mean, as tame as a steel chair can be, because I think Adam hits EY with the knee, his like shining wizard, and the chair is in the way. So he, it's violent. But I think there's something beautiful about the ending being what it is, almost like what could be looked at on paper as like, oh, well, that ending's kind of a letdown. I think that's the point. I think you have the carnage of what the match itself was, Like I think that in the inception of WarGames, it was called the Match Beyond, and it wasn't until like all members were in, and then they closed it in, and now the Match Beyond begins, or something like that. Like I think this has a similar sort of feel to it. You have these huge spots, you have this massive amount of carnage, and it kind of builds to the crescendo of the superplex off the top rope or off the top of the cage. But that's not necessarily the ending. Now we got to tie a nice bow on it. And it wouldn't make any sense to do another big spot off the top of the cage. We already did that. So now the ending, I think, should be a little bit of what would on paper be almost a letdown. And I think it was anything but that. I think it was exactly the explanation point, the button on this that was needed. And I'm going to pat us on the back. I think, all parties involved, everybody played their part. And I think for bringing back the WarGames to wrestling in 2017, after however many years it had been away, I think we did that thing some fucking justice, and I'm proud of that shit.